Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual event, Leveraging FinTech Platforms for Stronger Tenant Screening Solutions. As Katie said, my name is Akash Gupta. I lead our work in the rental technology industry to identify areas where alternative data can improve tenant screening solutions and processes, with the goal of streamlining property manager operations and creating the best possible consumer experience. Just quickly, a bit of background on Nova Credit for those who are unfamiliar. Our mission is to power a fairer and more inclusive financial ecosystem for the world. We provide the property management and financial services industries with the credit infrastructure and analytics that allow more people to access housing and credit. What we offer is essentially the ability to underwrite credit and verify income for any consumer, regardless of where they're from or how they earn. Now, one of the greatest joys of my day-to-day is working directly with our industry-leading partners like Yardi, learning and sharing ideas with them and using it to improve our shared product. So here today with us is Patrick Hennessy, VP and GM at Yardi. Patrick is a definitive industry leader and a very long-standing partner of Nova's, and I'm excited to share more about our work together. So Patrick, thank you for joining. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Yardi?
Thanks, Akash. Excited to be here today. And I joined Yardi in 2010 through their acquisition of RentGrow, which is a screening provider. And since that time, I've overseen the screening business for Yardi as well as a handful of our other business units.
Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction. Now, we've been partners on income verification for a few years now. Could you tell everyone a little bit about how we work together?
We actually started working with Nova on what was the credit passport product. And I believe that was back to 2016 or 2017. So it's been quite a relationship now. And that was intended to help new arrivals to the US have an easier time getting into the apartment that they wanted. And then we pivoted into income verification in 2019 and 2020. And the stars sort of aligned between what Nova was working on and what we were hoping to accomplish. And I think everything we've been able to do successfully with Nova kind of aligns, and the empowerment of the consumer and getting into these consumer permission data sets to make it easier for folks to get the things that they need and want.
Absolutely. So jumping into income verification, you've built what we would consider one of the first comprehensive automated income verification solutions in the tenant screening industry. And so we're very eager to talk about your experience doing that, how you went about it, what your thought process was. Let's start with just a real softball introductory question. What is income verification, and why do property managers need to incorporate it into screening?
Yeah, well, that's an easy one. So most landlords have been doing some form of income verification since the beginning of time or the beginning of the rental housing industry. I think we sort of saw the beginning of the shift online about a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago. And then as COVID began and everything really moved fully online, there was really a pivot into collecting documents and different pieces of paper from renters to looking to offer sort of a seamless online end-to-end solution. But ultimately, income verification is about three things from my perspective. One is making sure that each applicant or future resident has a consistent income. Second, that income will allow them to meet the rent obligation that they're looking to take on. And then third, weeding out the bad actors that are going to come in and commit fraudulent activities and have fraudulent behavior, and making sure that we're stopping those in their tracks and not letting those folks end up filling apartments at our clients' buildings.
Yeah, and of course, those are three really important goals, and we'll go into depth on each of them. What led you to try to solve this problem using alternative data?
So really trying to move more online. The easiest way for consumers to get their data out there and share it and use some of these new alternative data sets is through web-based solutions. There's also a push both with COVID and as we're sort of in a pivot in the housing industry to take work off of the site staff, so out of the hands of the property managers and the leasing agents. Some of your bigger operators are looking to centralize their operations. And so the more we can sort of take on as a technology provider to our clients and the less manual clerical type work our clients have to do, the better we are. We're also looking to be able to verify income across all demographics and asset types. And so we have clients that rent $20,000 a month buildings in New York City. We have clients that rent $700 a month apartments in rural communities. And there's very different profiles of people that are coming in and applying at those properties, and they have very different income structures and financial backgrounds. So we wanted to make sure we could bring a solution to market that would capture as much of that as possible. And then again, the fraud mitigation piece is a big component of what we're focused on as well.
Yeah, I think the mission of what you were trying to accomplish and the foundation of Nova Credit, helping people underwrite anyone, helping anyone get access to the financial ecosystem, was really in line with each other. But apart from that, I have to ask, why did you choose to partner with Nova Credit on this solution?
So prior to Nova Credit, we were working with one of the largest payroll database providers out there. And we've had that relationship for a number of years. And they have coverage for about half of the renter demographic based on our data. And so we were able to do a pretty good job verifying income in real time or near real time for about half the folks coming in the door. As things sort of moved along on the income verification front for rental housing, we had to figure out how to fill the gap for that other 50%. And we wanted to be able to move quick. So in selecting our partner, speed to market was going to be a big piece for us. We see ourselves as sort of the front end technology provider to the multifamily industry. And it's our goal to work with the best of breed providers for the back end data sets. And Nova seemed like a really good fit for us on that front. We also weren't looking to build dozens of different integrations with the different FinTechs and PropTechs that are popping up in this space. And so we were able to build sort of a single connection point between Nova and our screening platform. And then we have the ability to kind of plug and play with different technologies and solutions as they come to market. And then one of the biggest components of what we're doing in income verification is really the analytical work to come up with estimated incomes for the applicants coming in the door. So reading documents or reading bank accounts and validating the authenticity of those items is very important. But it's just as important that the math we're doing to come up with how much applicants are making on an annual income, that's critical to our success as well. So the analytical resources that were available to us to help kind of bring that piece to market really gave us a leg up over what everyone else was doing at the time.
Thank you. Yeah, and of course, I'll say this many times, but Yardi is one of our most valued partners for many reasons. But one is the amount of client feedback that you collect and share with us. You have this kind of unmatched pulse on the market, and that has been invaluable for us as well as we've kind of continued to improve our solution and provide that back to you. So, we talked a little bit about what income verification is, and now I want to talk more about what makes an income verification solution actually good and work. So what, in your view, are the main components of a good, strong income verification system?
So anything screening related, accuracy has to be number one, right? And so we have to do a really good job looking at the data we're getting through a shared bank account or through a document that's been provided to us, authenticating that information, and then putting it into the calculators to come up with accurate income amounts for the folks that we're screening. I think the next piece from there is really breadth of coverage. And so I spoke a little bit about the variety of properties that we work with, but because of those properties, we have applicants coming in who maybe work in the finance or legal world in a boutique type firm making 7 figures a year. We have some trust fund baby types. We have seniors who are on Social Security type payments. You have gig workers. You have regular folks who just work 40 hours a week at whatever their job is and get an hourly wage. And so we really needed to bring a solution to market that would help our clients get coverage across as many of those groups of people as possible. The next big piece I would say is the fraud detection and mitigation piece. And so helping to fight that fire that started to flare up during COVID and sort of engulfed multifamily for a little bit. And then the other piece that I think is just important is making it as easy for the renters to go through these processes as we can. And so there has to be a little bit of friction in the screening process to do a thorough job and to make sure that our clients, the property operators, are getting the data they need. But we really want to limit that friction as much as we reasonably can.
Yeah, that last piece I think is really interesting, and we're going to come back to that one as well, because I think there are probably some misconceptions around friction and consumer permission data. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and we'll come back to it in just a bit. So you described kind of what a good screening solution looks like. Of course, it's entirely a different thing to actually build one. There are many challenges facing screening at large and the whole industry. So could you tell us about some of those challenges? What are the biggest ones that you and your peer institutions face in effectively screening people, and perhaps how that has changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think right now the regulatory environment in the rental housing space and in tenant screening is very complex. We're seeing changes on a regular basis at the federal level, at a state level, in some cases even at a city or municipal level, governing both the types of data and the sequence of events that have to take place in the screening of an applicant. And so we're lucky as a fairly big operation to have a large legal team, oftentimes larger than I'd like for us to have. But we're able to understand the nuances and the regulatory environment across all of those jurisdictions to make sure that we're offering the right solution in the right place. There's also less in-person interaction than there was a number of years ago. And so, folks operating through the internet opens that door to fraud a little bit. And so we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to limit that as much as possible. And uh, digital processes have their own risks, but it's the way the world's working. So we have to embrace them and make it easy for renters to go through this process and at the same time help our clients protect their properties. And then we're seeing this shift in multifamily, especially with the biggest operators, to move that work off the property level and into sort of a centralized environment. And so, as opposed to the historic practice of making sure that property managers and leasing agents knew how to look at screening reports and understood these data sets, we're starting to establish relationships, what are essentially underwriting teams that are handling all of the screening and risk management activity for a 50,000 unit portfolio, a 100,000 unit portfolio. And so that's required us to pivot a little bit in terms of the way we operate from a support perspective and the product offering itself.
Yeah. So the first challenge you mentioned was regulatory, the shifting regulatory laws, both federal and state, maybe even municipal. I know that's probably top of mind for nearly everyone listening, everyone in the industry, actually. So I want to talk a little more about that. How have you ensured that you could maintain compliance while also at the same time introducing new data sources for income verification? Because some people might say that those two are at times at tension with each other.
Yeah, so I think first we really try to only work with reputable, established providers of the data that we're looking to get into. We have a pretty thorough vetting process for every new data provider or vendor that we're going to work with. And so we want to make sure that they're a stand-up company, that they're in good shape. As a reseller CRA, we want to work with consumer reporting agencies. So there's definitely a leg up to those providers who have taken that additional step to go through and consider their products and data to be FCRA certified and to be able to be used in that manner. We also want to work with partners that have the resources to kind of quickly resolve the hiccups and issues that are going to occur just with the scale that we've achieved. And then we also think as we kind of look ahead and get more and more into the consumer permission data sets, I think it's something that kind of excites our legal team because there tends to be less litigation around the data where the consumer is sharing with us as opposed to it coming out of some database that folks may or may not have visibility into what's in there and what it says. And so we're optimistic about the future of these data sets for all of those reasons.
Absolutely. Consumer permission data, consumer provided data is at the crux of what we do, and we think it's really important that the consumer is able to continue sharing that data and benefiting from it. So yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Okay, I think there's undoubtedly one other big challenge that's pretty top of mind. You've mentioned it already, and that is fraud. Fraud, of course, is a big concern in multifamily these days. There's all sorts of industry studies out there. I think the most recent and prevalent one is probably the NMHC survey, which found that something like 70% of operators saw fraud increase over the last 12 months, and in particular saw falsified pay stubs, employment references, or other income documents being one of the main sources of fraud. In that same survey, I think the respondents reported that nearly 25% of their evictions were due to fraudulent applications. So fraud is obviously just really top of mind for multifamily operators, both large and smaller. Do you think income verification can be used as an anti-fraud tool? And if so, how have you built your income verification solution to fight fraud?
I do. I do. So we really see two types of fraud on a regular basis. One would be essentially a person pretending to be someone else or pretending to be a person that doesn't exist at all. And that would be sort of a synthetic identity situation. And we have tools to help with that on the identity verification front. And there's a number of providers out there that are working towards those solutions. The second type of fraud, and I think that that's more relevant here, is folks who, once they've made it through that identity verification piece, are either creating fake income sources or exaggerating their income in order to qualify for the apartment that they're looking to rent. And a lot of this came about with some of the regulations that resulted from COVID, where in a lot of jurisdictions for a number of years, folks couldn't be evicted from their apartment after they moved in. And I think we saw a time where people were struggling to maintain employment, especially in the early months of COVID. And nothing drives fraud like desperation. And so I think we started to see a shift where a lot of people were doing essentially whatever they had to do to get into an apartment. Because once they were in the apartment, there wasn't a way for that property manager to remove them from the apartment. And so we had to bring some solutions into place to kind of help combat that. And so I think that ties directly to our income verification piece and what we're doing with Nova Credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're using, part of what we do together is we use bank data to estimate someone's income. And we've talked a lot about how you could kind of benefit from the bank KYC process and ensure that if somebody has opened a bank account, then, they are actually that person whose name is on that bank account. And thus when they connect it, you can feel good about that person actually having the income that is located in the bank account.
That's right. Yeah. If anyone's opened up a bank account in the last few years, I think they know how challenging it is and how many steps the banks put them through to come in person and validate that you are in fact Akash or I am in fact Patrick. And so I think our clients can have the confidence and we can have the confidence that if a major financial institution, a Bank of America or a city says that you are Akash or I'm Patrick, that we can trust that as long as we know that that's the person that's applying for the apartment. And we did sort of an anecdotal study with one of our major clients just a few months ago. And we were looking at the financial performance of folks who went through the various methods of income verification. And just looking at default rates, the folks who came through and completed the banking process had a default rate overall of less than 1% across their portfolio. This was a six-figure unit portfolio. Where for the other methods, whether it was doing document verification or one of those payroll database type searches, those both saw default rates north of 4%. And so I think beyond just the fraud mitigation piece, we're also seeing some direct financial benefits to having people go through the process of connecting their bank account.
Yeah. That's I think really helpful insight and shows some of the value of using bank data for verification. And so as our joint solution has evolved, we've actually found ways to use more and more bank data over time for verifications. And if I recall correctly, moving from the inception of our partnership to where we are today, we've actually started using 3, 4, 5 times as much bank data as we used to, and we've done that through a variety of workflow changes and other methods. So it's been a huge improvement in our joint solution.
Yeah. That's right.
And last question on fraud. So fraud, you talked a lot about how fraud has evolved over time. Some of it driven by macro factors, COVID being a big one. Some of it just driven by time. Fraud today is different than fraud was yesterday, and tomorrow will probably be different than it is today. So how are you thinking about building your income verification solution to sustain into the future and fight new types of fraud as they come up?
Yeah, and so I think the folks that work with me here on a daily basis are probably sick of hearing about it, and you might be sick of hearing about it from me as well. But I think it's very real that whatever we're doing to help combat fraud today, we're not going to be doing in 2 or 3 years, maybe even a year from now. For better or worse, criminals are generally a few steps ahead of law enforcement. And I think your smartest fraudsters are generally a step or two ahead of the technologies that are out there to prevent them from doing what they're trying to do. And so I think we constantly have to have our eyes and ears open to see what's going on, how these bad actors are finding their new and innovative ways to sort of beat some of the systems that are in place, and then quickly find solutions to plug in to shut that down and mitigate that risk as best we can. And I think that's a big part of why it's important to kind of be plugged into a nimble and flexible platform that can quickly tie in new technologies and new data sources to help fight the fight that's taking place at that time.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's a number of challenges that you've had to overcome. But the thing is, you've overcome them, and you've built a really strong solution, and one that has scaled really quickly and gotten amazing traction really with your clients. What can you tell us about the growth of income verification over the last couple of years?
Yeah, we've been lucky. I think we're just into the truly the fourth year of having this solution in the market, and there's well over 2 million units using our platform every day to fight fraud and to help verify their income. So I think we've hit critical mass and gained legitimate share, and I think the market has spoken, and these solutions are here to stay.
Absolutely. Yeah, the growth has been really tremendous to partner with you on, and been really pleased with our progress. So, given your success with this offering, I wanna turn to offering kind of tips and tricks maybe to others in the industry who are trying to build their own solution. I think a lot of people are going down this path, wondering how they want to build it out. What advice would you give to them as they embark on this journey?
Ultimately, I think it's all about completion rate more than anything else. And so we have to do an excellent job with any way that we're verifying someone's income. But at the end of the day, our clients want to rent as many apartments as possible, and they need as many folks that are coming in and applying to make it through this process. And so at times I'll hear folks in the industry talking about some incredibly rigorous processes where only a third or half of applicants make it through. And I think in the given market and climate, that's just not going to produce the yield of qualified applicants getting through that's needed. And so based on the diversity in our client portfolio and the diversity of folks coming in from an economic background perspective, it's really putting the right combination of solutions out there to maximize that completion rate and get those folks through the process so that they can sign their lease and move in and start paying rent.
Yeah, and part of that is using as many data sources as possible. Obviously, you mentioned using bank data, document data, payroll data, and building that breadth of services and data services is really essential. It's probably the most effective way to expand your coverage and completion rate.
That's right. We need to be able to cover each of those areas and have the same level of high confidence in all of the results that we're getting, regardless of the data source, so that our clients can trust the outcomes that are coming through these tools.
Yeah. I think data sources is one really important component. Another one, of course, is just the consumer experience. Is there anything that you can share around the consumer experience and how you've built that to maximize conversion and completion?
Yeah, so I think speed and efficiency is critical for the consumer journey or the renter experience. And so when most of these solutions came to market going back 3, 4, 5 years, they were through sort of these clunky processes where an email would have to be sent to an applicant or a text would be sent to an applicant. And our clients would come to us, especially their marketing folks, and say, hey, we've spent all this money building this amazing sales funnel to have folks easily and efficiently go through our application process online. And now you're sending them a link and telling them to leave that browser and go do something else outside of that flow that we've built. And so over the last few years, the focus has really been on getting the systems aligned so that a prospective renter can go through the process from selecting their unit, filling out their application, paying their app fee, getting screened, completing income verification, and getting to the step where they'll sign their lease in well under 10 minutes for anyone who's remotely computer savvy. And doing that all in one browser on one device without getting any direction to walk away or to change screens or to look at something on their phone. And I think that that's been another big piece of driving those completion rates. If we can keep everyone's attention for 7 or 8 minutes, they can go from picking their unit to having a new apartment.
Yeah, I've of course been through that flow with you several times, and it's really impressive. I've rented many apartments in my life, and certainly the experience has been disjointed, many different windows, documents back and forth, emailing with one, two, or three different folks at the leasing office, and seeing how much that you've changed that in your own product is really tremendous. It is, as you described, 6, 7 minutes straight through from picking a unit to signing a lease. And I can only imagine how much of a game changer that is for your clients.
For sure.
And it's funny, you mentioned starting out with these hacky implementations where you send an email or a text message. I mean, we started there. We started there years ago, and we have since found ways to embed more efficiently into your overall process. And so that has driven some really good results for the clients that are using that. So
That's right. Yeah, it was us. We're as guilty as anyone, but fortunately, we're beyond that now, and can really offer a seamless, fully integrated experience.
absolutely. Okay. That's really great insight. I want to just switch to one last topic, which is looking forward. So the next few years, and let's say in income verification and beyond, what are some of the big picture changes you see coming in tenant screening? And then how do you think alternative data might play into those?
Yeah, so one of the topics that's been really hot in tenant screening, especially out of Colorado, Maryland, now California, and probably coming soon to a neighborhood near most of us, is the idea of portable or reusable screening reports. And so essentially, allowing a consumer to come and get a copy of their screening report and then be able to share that with a landlord and avoid having to pay multiple application fees or go through essentially the same process a number of different times for properties that are next to each other or down the block from one another. And so I think a lot of these consumer permission data sets are kind of the first step into making that a reality and getting the renter used to being engaged in the process and actually driving the process to be able to see that data and make that data available to the landlord, as opposed to, again, not really having visibility or a clear understanding of what the data is that a landlord is looking at or using as part of their lease decision. I think the other big piece as I look ahead is there's on the regulatory front, there's a lot of scrutiny on the use of credit reports and credit scores in rental housing. And so I think as folks get more and more comfortable going through these open banking type processes and sharing their banking data, I think we're a few years out from that banking data in a lot of ways replacing that traditional credit data. Based on the information that we're seeing and the folks who go through the application process on our platform, there's far, far more people who have bank accounts than have traditional credit with one of the credit bureaus. And I talk to the credit bureau folks on a regular basis. I attend a lot of their events. One of the terms that I think they use, and we hear this a lot, is that there's a massive number of underbanked people in America, right? And when they say underbanked, they're really talking about folks who don't have credit history. But at this point, I think that's kind of a misnomer. And it's not really that folks are underbanked. I think more folks are just underborrowed, meaning that they don't have trade lines or collections or different items that would appear on those traditional credit reports. But they have bank accounts. They're making money. They're paying their bills regularly and on time. And so I think there's a real opportunity for banking data to kind of slip in and ultimately replace your traditional credit data.
Yeah, I mean, we completely agree. And I think this is actually a really great segue. We got a question about income verification for folks with dynamic income streams. So gig workers, people who have multiple jobs. We typically approach those folks by verifying them with bank data, but I would love to turn it over to you and say, what do you think are some of the ways we solve that problem? What are some of the trends, challenges, and opportunities going forward?
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of time really trying to solve for the gig worker environment, and that really took off over the last 5 years or so. But at this point, you can't be a gig worker without a bank account. Your Ubers and DoorDashes of the world aren't sending paper checks to anyone or really doing anything else. You have to accept an ACH payment for them to pay you your weekly money, or in some cases your daily money. And so in most cases where folks do have multiple sources of income, the bank account connection is going to tell the full story. And even if someone has multiple bank accounts, let's say they have a checking and a savings and maybe a brokerage account, they have the ability to connect all three of those to give full visibility into their financial picture. But at the same time, if folks have different pay stubs from different jobs, we have methods to accept those and validate those documents and apply our fraud tools to those documents. But really, the more and more as time goes on, all of this data is ultimately flowing into people's bank accounts, and that's what a big part of why I think that's the future of where all this is going.
Yeah, thank you. Completely agree with that. And I think what you were saying earlier about people being under borrowed, not underbanked, is particularly true, and how the proof is in the bank accounts, which exist. Like you said, people are earning, they are paying their bills, and perhaps they just aren't able to access the financial ecosystem because they are dependent on bureau data or credit data, which doesn't accurately reflect their creditworthiness. So,
Right.
yep. Thanks for sharing all that. Okay. Thank you very much for the insight. We always learn a lot from chatting with you and working with you. I wanted to provide everyone quickly with a summary of today's conversation, which I think we were kind of transcribing in the background. So, Patrick, do you want to maybe walk us through the quick takeaways from our whole talk?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, in my experience, our experience, we've seen these new income verification tools really help not just mitigate fraud, but also improve overall financial performance and increase efficiencies for our clients by putting less work on their staff and more work into these automated systems. The regulatory environment, I probably talk more about than anyone's happy to hear while we're here. But there's more and more regulation coming in this space, and I think it's important to work with partners that have the credentials and the resources to really do it the right way and make sure that they're as compliant as possible. And then these consumer permission data sets, they're not going away. They're only going to grow, and I firmly believe that they are the future, and they do truly allow for an easy end user experience. I know early on we'd have clients who push back and say, "Oh, I don't know that my renters are going to want to share their account." It's like, well, if they have a Venmo account or something similar, they've done this. And I don't know anyone under 35 who doesn't have a Venmo account. And so I think the renter demographic, the renter population, is very, very comfortable with these data sets and probably have more confidence and faith in it than they would in sort of the traditional credit world. So I think consumer permission data is here to stay, and let's use it the way we can to make people's lives easier.
Completely agree. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, really appreciate your insight, your partnership. We obviously believe that fintech partnerships, when done right, are essential to staying on top of a dynamic and changing landscape, the landscape that you described. Our partnership obviously has yielded really tremendous results over the last couple of years, and we're excited to see where the next couple of years take us. So thank you to everyone for joining today to listen to our conversation and for participating. And if you are interested in learning more about our tenant screening solutions, please visit novacredit.com/income navigator to learn more today. One other note, thank you again for attending. We have, I think, a short survey that'll go out. We hope that you would respond to it to help us build our future programs. Let us know if this is helpful and interesting, and then we can help provide some more. Thanks again, everyone.